started like any other day, until a single moment turned a peaceful home into the center of an investigation. Beneath the calm surface lay secrets no one saw coming. A 911 call, a story that didn't add up, and a husband whose death would unravel a web of lies. This is the story of Darlene and Keith Gentry, a marriage built on love, shaken by suspicion, and forever changed by what happened one November morning. November 9th, 2005, Robinson, Texas. A wife's early morning call for help would set off a chain of events that no one in the neighborhood could have imagined. When officers arrived at the Gentry home on Moonlight Drive, the scene appeared calm, almost ordinary, but the bedroom told a different story. Keith Gentry lay on his bed, a single gunshot wound to the head. Blood had soaked the pillow and sheets. There was no sign of struggle. The back door was open, and 2 handguns were missing from a cabinet that remained otherwise undisturbed. Nothing else had been taken. Darlene explained that she had woken early, found the door open, and discovered her husband unresponsive. Her story, at first glance, painted the picture of a robbery or home invasion. Yet, investigators noticed discrepancies, small details that didn't fit the typical pattern of a break-in. Keith was still alive when paramedics transported him to Hillcrest Baptist Medical Center, but his injuries were severe. Within days, he would succumb to the wound. For law enforcement, the case immediately presented an unsettling question. If no one else had entered the house, who had fired the shot that would end Keith Gentry's life? Keith and Darlene Gentry appeared, on the surface, to live a normal middle-class life in Robinson, Texas. They were married, in their early 30s, and raising 3 young sons. Keith was known as a quiet, dependable father, someone who focused on his family and his work. Friends and neighbors described him as steady and responsible, a man committed to providing for those he loved. Darlene, by contrast, had once been a high school homecoming queen and carried herself with ambition and poise. Friends described her as organized, socially adept, and careful in managing her household. She was attentive to her appearance and her surroundings, maintaining a life that looked polished from the outside. But behind the facade, there were signs of strain. Neighbors occasionally heard arguments, and those close to the couple noted tension over finances and daily responsibilities. Keith expressed dissatisfaction with aspects of their marriage, while Darlene maintained a structured, sometimes controlling household. In retrospect, these details framed the context of the morning of November 9th, 2005, a day that would shatter the family and set in motion a meticulous investigation. From the moment investigators entered the Gentry home, the details didn't fully align with Darlene's story. The back door was open, but there were no signs of forced entry. The gun cabinet had not been disturbed, yet the .22 caliber revolver that would later be identified as the murder weapon was missing. Nothing else in the house had been taken. Detectives conducted multiple interviews with Darlene. Her account remained consistent at a surface level, but under scrutiny, small inconsistencies began to emerge. She described waking early, discovering the door open, and finding her husband unresponsive, suggesting a possible intruder. Yet the physical evidence told a different story. No struggle, no stolen items, and no forced entry. Investigators also examined financial records and life insurance policies. Keith had 2 policies totaling several $100,000, both naming Darlene as the beneficiary. While the police did not yet make assumptions, they noted the potential motive these policies presented. As investigators pieced together the timeline of Keith's final hours and Darlene's movements afterward, a pattern began to emerge. Her actions in the days following the shooting drew attention, particularly her involvement in property and real estate matters connected to the later recovery of evidence. At the end of November, the investigation had shifted from a possible home invasion to a focused inquiry on the events within the Gentry household and on Darlene herself. In the weeks after Keith Gentry's death, investigators began following Darlene Gentry's movements more closely. She inquired about purchasing a piece of land that included a small pond, and later requested that the pond be filled in, a request that raised red flags with the landowner and was reported to law enforcement. Police obtained a search warrant for the pond. Divers recovered a .22 caliber revolver from the water. Ballistic testing confirmed it was the same weapon used in the shooting that had killed Keith Gentry. The missing gun, submerged in the pond, became a central piece of evidence. Further investigation included surveillance footage. On at least one occasion, Darlene was captured returning to the pond at night, wearing waders and moving along the water's edge. Investigators concluded these movements were connected to the recovery or concealment of the weapon. This evidence, combined with earlier inconsistencies in her statements and the existence of substantial life insurance policies on Keith, allowed investigators to build a focused case. The timeline of her actions, the location of the gun, and her access to it created a direct link to the shooting. By late November 2005, law enforcement had gathered enough evidence to make an arrest. Darlene Gentry was charged with the murder of her husband and held in McLennan County Jail pending trial, setting the stage for the next chapter in the case. Darlene Gentry's trial began in February 2007 in McLennan County. Prosecutors built their case on physical evidence, witness testimony, and her actions after Keith's death. The .22 caliber revolver recovered from the pond and matched to the bullet that killed Keith was central. Surveillance footage showed Darlene returning to the pond at night in waders, moving through the water. Investigators pointed to inconsistencies in her statements and her position as beneficiary of two sizable life insurance policies. Witnesses spoke of marital strain and financial pressure, reinforcing the prosecution's theory of motive. The lack of forced entry or theft, they argued, indicated a deliberate act, not a break-in. The defense portrayed Darlene as a grieving wife and mother, denying any involvement in her husband's death. After deliberation, the jury found her guilty of murder. She was sentenced to 60 years in prison, eligible for parole in 2037. Her 3 sons were placed in the care of relatives, left to rebuild their lives away from the home where everything changed. For investigators, the case stood as proof of how small inconsistencies, a misplaced gun, a late-night visit to a pond, can unravel an entire story. For the community of Robinson, it was a reminder that even the most ordinary homes can hide turmoil no one sees coming. Nearly 2 decades later, Keith Gentry's death is still remembered not only for the crime itself, but for the quiet precision with which the truth was uncovered. Beneath the surface of calm, it revealed what can happen when trust, desperation, and deception meet behind closed doors. What do you think truly motivated Darlene Gentry? Desperation, greed, or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more real-life stories like this, where quiet lives hide shocking secrets, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you with the next case.